Outside the centre of Florence, far away from where any tourists dare venture, there is an old monastery called San Salvi. It was an important monastery too, once revered, having existed from the 11th century up until the 19th. Yet it shows little of its former glory. However, this monastery does contain one secret, and a beautiful one at that. In fact, it might still possess the greatest hidden gem in the history of art.
And here we go, a genuinely overlooked masterpiece, a true hidden gem. Here we have Andrea del Sarto's representation of the Last Supper, and it is truly a drama that is being played out for our eyes. In fact, the perspective of the floor even looks like a stage set, the way it tilts towards the viewer. Every character in the scene is exaggerated by their expression, and then there is the incredible folding drapery rising and moving in space. And then the key moment of the story is extremely tense. The bread slowly being handed from Christ to Judas, who doesn't even look at him. The bread that is a symbol of Judas's betrayal.
Andrea del Sarto is a painter you may not be familiar with. He is one of those artists that's legacy has suffered from being born a little after Leonardo and Michelangelo. But his contribution to Florentine art is certainly significant. In his lifetime, he was awarded some of the most prestigious commissions in the city. His work can still be seen today in many of the most important churches and museums in Florence. Yet his greatest masterpiece is out here, in the suburbs, and really very few people know about it. And yet, you might find it strangely familiar. That's because Leonardo da Vinci created something not so different for another monastery in Milan. Beyond the fact that both works represent the Last Supper, the compositional arrangement is fairly similar, the scale is similar, and they also share perspectival tricks. With all this in mind, one might be led to think that Andrea's representation of the Last Supper was heavily inspired by Leonardo's. But actually, I don't think that's the case at all. In fact, I'd make the case for Andrea's vision displaying something truly original. The colouring of this fresco is extremely warm, and the drapery does not seem like anything that has ever existed in human civilization. Maybe it is what people wear in heaven. The setting also appears somewhat divine, as though it takes place on Mount Olympus. The interior is extremely lavish, and there are waiters on a terrace shuffling to tend to their dinner guests. Hardly would this have been a typical setting for a carpenter to eat with his unemployed friends. But the best and rarest element of this painting is the narrative, and the way it's articulated. It defies the status quo. Most Italian Renaissance paintings of the Last Supper represent the reaction to Christ's words, "One of you will betray me." But Andrea represents the scene just a little after that moment, according to John. Jesus was troubled in spirit and declared, "Very truly I tell you, one of you will betray me." Simon Peter therefore motioned to him to ask Jesus of whom he was speaking. And Jesus answered, "It is the one to whom I give this piece of bread when I have dipped it in the dish." So when he had dipped the piece of bread, he gave it to Judas. After he received the bread, Satan entered into him. Judas seems to protest, yet we can see under the table, and his engaged feet suggest that he is getting up to leave.